And I am joined today by one of my good and longtime friends, also a guy from the industry, Josh Rock. Josh, welcome to the High Volume Hiring Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Stephen. Good to see everybody here today.
So before we get into talking about work, I have a question for you. And you probably know where this is going because Josh and I share a passion for hockey. Unfortunately for Josh, he was born south of the border in the United States. And so he struggles to know the correct answers. Okay, he's got a University of Minnesota Bulldogs mug and taking a sip out of it, which is weird because it must be really foul. But that's another story for another day. So I have a good, better, best question for you. So the first thing is, so this, Team Canada jersey, I'm somebody who grew up in Winnipeg, I'm thinking that that's at least on the good side. And then
I would say your Team Canada.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You guys have been, owning us a little bit here and there. So I'll give you that. Go ahead.
Okay, so we created hockey, and we're the only country that really knows how to play it. I think we can agree on that.
Interesting.
And then perhaps better, especially as of the date of this recording, nice Minnesota Wild jersey. Any comments, feedback there?
Well, I love the fact that you're going with Minnesota.
There we go.
We've got number 1 in the Central Division at this current juncture. Poised to make the playoffs. I think we're good there. Yeah.
I think it's like an 83 or 84% chance. Basically, the team would have to fall apart, which clearly people who tune into a hiring podcast are going to be really concerned about how the Minnesota Wild are doing like towards the end of March. And then for the best, I think we definitely have to agree, University of Minnesota Golden Gophers, right? National champion. Is it every year or is it only every other?
No. You haven't won a title in so long.
My audio must be cutting out.
Your last title was what, 2009? Maybe? We have that has 3 national titles since 2011. Granted, we may not be in it this year, but things happen. Our first losing season since 2006.
Wow.
It's a long time. 4 straight national title championship games. 4. When was the last time you were in one?
Well, I don't think we should get into details like that because we just don't have time for it. I think we can I think we can safely conclude by helping ensure that the listeners know that clearly I went to the University of Minnesota, the Twin Cities campus, right, which is why I'm a Gopher fan, and Josh went to the University of Minnesota Duluth, which is why he's a Bulldogs fan. University of Minnesota is kind of like the main campus, the Twin Cities one, the main campus. It's the one that's existed forever. One of the biggest schools in the world. Minnesota Duluth, I think, if I remember correctly, is located in an abandoned taconite mine shaft deep beneath Lake Superior. Right? No. Okay.
Well, Stephen, let's make one really smart transition here. You have the Frozen 4 coming up in Tampa, Florida.
Yes.
Have you seen the movie Miracle, where Jim Craig's character
into double digits?
Okay, so there's a spot in the movie where they're talking about how the team's going to come together, and Jim Craig's character looks at his teammate and says, how does it look so far? And he says, well, a bunch of Minnesota guys and a bunch of Boston guys, and his teammate says, that ain't going to work. Well, guess what? Go Boston. Sorry, Gophers.
Ouch.
There we go.
All right. So let's dig in. So tell the listeners a little bit about Nuss. What is it that you guys do? And before we got on, you were sharing some numbers, like how many people, mechanics, truck drivers, et cetera, those sorts of people you normally would recruit in a year. How many, like over the last year, you did?
Yeah, great, Stephen. So Nuss is a family of Mack Volvo dealerships in Minnesota and Wisconsin. Started in Illinois in the 1950s, moved to Minnesota in the mid 70s, and has been growing ever since. when I came here, the director of HR, asked me, how would you transition from going from 9,000 hiring transactions to 40 a year? It's like, wait, what? It is different. It is a different challenge than the volume that I was doing in my other industry, which was healthcare. Here, we focus primarily on hiring diesel mechanics, part sales, and then administrative roles throughout the dealership group. But we've definitely seen an uptick in not only availability of candidates, but of hires. Our highest before I got here was 32 mechanics in a year. Last year in 22, we hired 57 diesel mechanics. Never been done in the history of the company. We hired at that same year in 18, we had, I think, 82 total hires. Last year, we had 103 total hires. Again, never been seen in the history of the company. So while many wouldn't see a diesel dealership or dealership group seen as high volume, we are definitely seeing that in what we do. Diesel mechanics are incredibly difficult to find. There's a shortage, much like healthcare and nursing, but we're able to sell our culture, sell our people-centric focus, and get folks who want to make a transition to join us.
Okay. And, I would imagine that, perhaps the culture was already there within the talent acquisition team before you got there. And that's part of the reason why you were a good cultural fit and all of that, you personally. But one of the things, and a little bit of an aside, one of the things about Josh is that he is like just incredibly authentic. Like, this is who I am. And it's almost all really good. In fact, I struggle to think of anything bad. Other than, perhaps choice of hockey teams, but whatever, we won't go back there.
I can't be perfect.
But I would think that one of the reasons for the success, quite frankly, is I think you would bring that voice of authenticity when in the ads, the networking events, going to career fairs, hanging out at a truck stop or wherever it is that you're finding candidates. It's like, okay, this guy's real. And probably members of your team probably have that same attitude. We're not going to tell you that something that isn't true just to get you to join us, just to get you to quit 45 days later.
Yeah. There's no bait and switch here. There's none of that. When I talk to a candidate, I ask them, what they're looking for and why. I tell them the positives of where we align with that. If there's a candidate that isn't going to fit me, I tell them why. I give them the keys of the kingdom. I tell them, I'm like, if this is where you want to work, here's the steps to get here. So that way they have a path to future success in their career. This isn't a transaction. This is a branded, connected opportunity for both them and for us. On top of that, and when I was in healthcare, one of the things I did often is I would talk to predominantly females, right?
Sure.
Healthcare is stereotypically female, based on 98%, I think, female. But I would ask, what is their spouse do? Because if I'm going to steal somebody from anywhere across the country to move to Minnesota to be a nurse or an x-ray tech or what have you, they were going to be bringing a spouse. Well, I do the same thing on the flip side here at Nuss. I know when I bring a diesel tech, their spouse may have a job in another industry. And so what connections do I have that can lend to them getting an opportunity and ease that transition of either moving cities, moving states, sometimes even moving countries to Minnesota to be a diesel mechanic. So they are getting that 100 authentic, from me. And not only just the candidate who I'm interested in, but also their family, because I'm moving the whole group.
Yeah. What's the expression? It's like people come to work for you for the job, but they stay for the people.
Yeah.
And part of that is just at the end of the day, when they go home, are they happy?
Mm-hmm.
And if their spouse is miserable living in Minnesota, which, hey, this can be a hard state for people to live in, right? If you can't handle the winter, please don't come here.
Yeah.
But if you like the winter, then there are places in the country that are better. So you mentioned the scale of hiring at Nuss, little over 100, right? That is well into what I would consider to be high volume hiring. It's towards the lower end of the spectrum, but as soon as you start to get into dozens a year for a particular role, you're into that high volume. There are some organizations, of course, that are doing hundreds, thousands, and the Amazons of the world are doing tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands during COVID when they couldn't hire enough package handlers, right?
Yeah.
I think you had mentioned that in your previous role with the healthcare companies, you were doing like, was it 9,000 a year?
We did a total of 9,000 transactions a year.
Compare the tools that you have available to you at Nuss versus at the healthcare companies,
Yeah.
some of which maybe are the same, some of which are really different. But like,
Mhm.
what do you have that you love now? What did you have then that you love then?
When I went to Fairview, which is a 36,000 employee healthcare employee group in Minneapolis, 12 hospitals, 56 clinics at its peak when I was there. We were using a really archaic ATS called Green Tree. It was based out of California. We were the single largest employer still using their system. Eventually, they couldn't handle us anymore.
Sure.
It was like working on an Apple IIe, green screen, yellow lettering, brutal. Horrible experience.
Then you upgraded to Windows 95.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we upgraded to many systems, but we started to look at two different applicant tracking systems. We did some RFPs. We landed on people who unfortunately didn't deliver. Unfortunate for them and for us at the time. But then we moved to iSIMS. iSIMS, obviously a top 4 in the industry.
Definitely.
We moved to them, definitely aided our efforts, eased our processes, eased the candidate experience. We loaded in some additional tools as well because we needed to. I mean, when you're doing 9,000 hiring transactions with 20 recruiters approximately, that's 200 hires a week we were doing, which is just sheer insanity. It was busier than busy. We got into things like video interviewing, which they had never done. I was using Google for doing video interviews with candidates across the country. When I had gone, they're like, wait, video interviewing? What do you mean?
Yeah.
How do you do video interviews?
And this was pre-COVID.
This was pre-COVID. I started there
because
in
video interviewing
2015?
in 2021 is like whatever. Everybody's doing that. But this was years before COVID.
Yeah. Google Hangouts was a foreign word to my team when I started there. Same thing with text messaging. I had said for many years, let's get text messaging going. And finally, it wasn't until iSIMS acquired Text Recruit that we actually started to use it. I had been talking about it for years. Guys, let's go. Come on. Interact with candidates in real time. They were a very conservative organization at the time. They started to add these tools and definitely saw a shift in how fast they could do with time to hire and also impact that candidate experience. So fast forward here to Nuss, they had shifted from a previous ATS to Ceridian's Dayforce tool.
Okay.
Ceridian is known for HCM. Not really for recruitment. Their recruitment module is basic in comparison to some others in the marketplace. They're starting to make strides into implementing new efforts with it. They've just added text messaging. That'll roll out sometime here. I think they said Q2, Q3 of this year. They partnered with, I think, Textio on that. So that'll be a great addition. I'm using currently Emissary to bridge the gap. I've been using them for 2 years now. Emissary is a fantastic partner. Cost-wise, it's nominal. It's $500 a year per user. Easy to implement. It's a Chrome extension. So I'm able to piece pieces together for what is lacking in their ATS side. But when you're only doing so many hires per year, which we're doing in comparison to others, these tools are working for us. I'm not going to go in and make a 6-figure ATS change, for somebody who's only doing, 40 to 50 hires a year. It doesn't make sense. So are there new tools out there? Yeah, there's a bunch. I mean, go to HR Tech, go to Unleash coming up here in April. There's so many new things out there and so many new partnerships. It's going to be a dynamic change and shift in this industry for the years to come.
Yeah. Awesome. And, a takeaway that I have, and hopefully the listeners do as well, is don't be afraid to fail.
Yeah.
Right. Like going from one ATS and the first one didn't work, and then you go to the next. But set yourself up for success. If if the tool that you're looking at, whether it's an emissary or any others, has relatively small downside, it's like, if it fails, what's the worst that happens? Maybe I lose a few days of work, spread over the course of a month or two, and hundreds or maybe a few $1,000s. But what's the upside? If I can communicate with my candidates via text so that 99.8% of them or whatever respond within a day versus email, when maybe half of them will just even see it, let alone respond to it. In a high volume situation, you've got to be top of mind and you've got to be fast.
Diesel mechanics,
not just fast.
Diesel mechanics don't respond to emails. They don't.
Sure.
You got to either call them or text them. That's the only way that they're going to connect. They're not on computers all day long like office white collar staff are. So you have to find a way to bridge that gap. When you talk about not worrying about failing, here's one of the things as somebody who shifted from being a vendor to being a practitioner. One of the biggest things that I learned is look for trusted partners. Don't look for the transaction. The software is only one element to your success. Having that trusted partner in that vendor, whether it's your customer success partner or whomever that might be, it's not going to be always going to be the sales guy. Look for the customer support team in that, because when you are at your worst, when your software isn't working and you have issues, in your daily processes, who is going to be there to help? That was one of the biggest things that I found, is that we weren't getting what we were looking for in that initial ATS partner with PeopleFluent. So when we went to iCIMS, we had, since they were so robust, they had such a big team at the time, they were able to help us through those processes, get us through it. Yeah, it's more expensive, right? But we were able to get what we needed and increase our productivity by having something that worked for all of our team. So look for that. Make sure you're asking the right questions of that vendor partner, so it's more than just the software that you're getting.
Yeah. And the fact that like an iCIMS, for example, has been there, done that with other organizations that are somewhat similar, you don't want your vendor to be inventing the wheel.
No.
If they've done it before and they can point to example after example after example of success, even if they aren't able to tell you who those customers were, show you their detailed metrics, right?
They will tell you. They'll tell you. They got lists.
Yeah.
They'll tote the graphics, all the logos on their slides. They'll tell you who they
yeah.
work with.
The logo collage.
Yes.
But minimizing that risk, maximizing the upside, tremendous. Awesome. Josh, thank you so much. This has been a fun episode. Great seeing you again today.
You too.
And just if any parting words, mine would be Sky Ma.
Okay. Go Boston. Hey, you know what? We can't agree on this. How about this? We'll agree on one thing.
Okay.
Michigan sucks. They're done.
Thank goodness.
Yes.
Cheers, man.
Good to see you, buddy. Have a good